So good evening, everyone. I'm Melanie Thongs. I'm the coordinator of the creative writing programs at University of Idaho, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's reading by distinguished visiting writer Mary Szybist. The English department has hosted a wealth of literary events throughout the course of this academic year. We've had readings by many authors, including Steve Banks and Elizabeth Sloan, the trio of poets Catherine Nurnberger, Laura Reed, and Maya Jewel Zeller. We screened The Act of Becoming by our own UI MFA alum, Jennifer Anderson, and her partner Vern Lott. We had the Hemingway Festival earlier this month, complete with readings by Hemingway fellow Jerry Benson and 2016 PEN Hemingway Award winner Otessa Moshfegh. We've had lots of book launches, or shall I say several book launches. There was Fire Girl and The House of Nails by Sayantini Dasgupta of our own department. And just last week, our own Alexandra Teague debuted her first novel, The Principles Behind Flotation, to a standing room only crowd at Book People. And I will take a moment now to invite you to Bob Wrigley's book launch, the debut of his most recent book of poetry, Box. That will be this Saturday night, 7:30, Book People. See you there.
All right.
Bob will also be reading from Box on the Wazoo campus on April 10th, that's a Monday. You can check out our Facebook page for more information about that reading. And I would add, stay tuned for more literary events. We have things upcoming throughout the summer and into the next school year. And so keep an eye on that and come out. And finally, this year we've had a full complement of distinguished visiting writers. We've had Claire V. Watkins in fiction and Benjamin Bush in nonfiction in the fall. And that brings us to our distinguished visiting poet, Mary Szybist, who we're delighted and honored to have you here tonight. And I announced this earlier, but there are copies of her book, Incarnadine, for sale in the back of the room. If you would like to have her sign your copy or purchase a copy to sign, they are available, and she will be signing books after the question and answer session. So now I'm going to turn things over to Garrett Chavez, who will be introducing our guest tonight.
Good evening, and thank you all for coming. I don't know how much you're going to want this adjusted, but I don't want to be super formal here. Maybe that's typical of me, and I apologize for those that would prefer me to recycle what you can Google. But Mary Szybist was my teacher when I was an undergrad, and a lot of people have since come to know her work, and they often ask me, like, what's Mary Szybist like? And I have a sock answer, and that is that Mary Szybist is a magic person. Which generally goes over just fine. People seem to be pretty okay with that because it's believable. And for a time there, I probably thought that as well. However, I've never believed in magic. I don't think there's a such thing as miracles. And so it's complicated to describe someone as being magic, whether they have been cast upon by magic or can wield it at their will. And I think that that's an easy out. I think that it's reductive and dismissive because in my experience, even this week, being reminded, Mary works harder than most people I know. She thinks deeper. she asks herself regularly what she's not thinking, and she reminds me to do so. Poets go to school for different reasons than most other students, and our sort of structure of education is very much one of mentorship and protege, and it's been an ongoing tradition for who knows how long. Mary's been very lucky in her experience as a student. Her first workshop was with Rita Dove, Charles Wright, Robert Haas, Tori Graham, names you may recognize. I have also been so lucky, having studied with Mary, Robert Wrigley, Alexandra Teague, and all of these people have taught me not only how to write better poems, but how to be a writer. What is possible in writing and in the life of being a writer. I have nothing but gratitude for that. Welcome, Mary Szybist.
In the beginning, God said light, and there was light. Now God says, give them a little theatrical lighting, and they're happy, and we are. So many of us dressing each morning, testing endless combinations, becoming in our mirrors more ourselves, imagining in an entrance the ecstatic weight of human eyes. Now that the sun is shearing toward us, what is left but to let it close in for our close-up? Let us really feel how good it is to be still in it, making every kind of self that can be looked at. God, let us be your bright accomplices. God, here are our shining spines. Let there be no more dreams of being more than a beginning. Let it be that to be is to be backlit, and then to be only that light. I want to say thank you to Carol. Thank you to Melanie. Thank you to Mike and Alexandra and Bob. I'm really happy to be here with so many poets I admire. Thank you all for coming. This is 12th night from the Willow Cabin, and the Willow Cabin in Shakespeare's Twelfth Night is what what's her name? The Cesario character, Viola as Cesario, when she is reprimanding Olivia for not returning love, says, well, if I was wooing you, I would build a willow cabin at your gate and essentially not leave you alone until you loved me. Can you see through the window the moth color of an old handkerchief flickering up through the dark, as if it would tell us something? I continue to stack the forks, neck upon neck, until they lie still, they lie right. The moth flutters lower, the cross-eyed cat approaches. How can I say what it is to see her brush me? As she denies me even the smallest affection, I call her Lucy, after the rich woman of Sicily who spooned out each of her eyes, placed them on a platter, and sent it to her suitor as a way of refusing. What separates self from the flutter of longing? They don't fit the way these spoons fit into each other. They're more like knives that won't stack. We do not own ourselves. We know not what, and fear it. Yes, I believe miracles might change me, but I mean conversion from. O sweet burn all over, we do not distinguish thirst from hunger, nor the cat at our feet, temptation from the moth at the window. O sweet burn, I have always wanted this pleasure, this end. Yet I intend to be gentle. Approaching elegy. It's hard to believe you are dying, like looking at a Jamesian scene, skipping past happiness to a garden bench beyond the trees. You fill the form of heroine. You sit in your black dress, too tired to imagine the rest of yourself. An old suitor appears, grabs you possibly too forcefully by the wrists. He is still impossibly in love. You disengage your wrists. He leans forward, looks into your eyes, which you close, as if you were all by yourself. He moves closer, talking very fast about happiness. He places his cloak on your shoulders, imagines he'll rescue you. Around you, forms grow darker. House, branch, hydrangea. Above you, freckled expanses of leaves form the beginnings of barbed, lopsided shrouds. A possible solace. If only his kiss could please you, I wouldn't need to imagine past the clean architecture of the story. And perhaps it is wrong to look past that, wrong to ask about happiness. Past midnight, he continues to offer himself. Before, he had offered aimless passion, but now you see it for yourself. He has an idea. He points into the darkness. He is grave, formal. The dark has swallowed the long shadows of the oaks, though not your unhappiness, and it is about to swallow you. Soon it will no longer be possible. There is just one more page to turn for me to look through your eyes. So I would like to imagine for you something past tragedy. Just as I would like to imagine that we are not in danger, that we have selves more solid than stars, that we are safe in the pages of books we can reopen to look at each other. Except that we are not women formed of words, but of impossible longings. What was it that you wanted besides happiness? You are dying. I have no ideas about happiness and no patience to imagine it possible. Soon you will not be the heroine. You will not be yourself. And it's not that you lost the formula. Your form is losing you. Look at how brave you are. I imagined the great point was to be happy as possible with the quick forms that imagine us. But the last time I looked, there you were, distant and bright in the not-so-blue darkness, imagining yourself. I have not attempted a sestina since that one. This poem began found something called a romance writer's phrase book. I don't know if any of you have seen these, but it's a huge book full of cliches and lines for romance writers to just plunk out and put into their prose. And I was completely fascinated by it. And one of the things that just struck me was I had never read a romance novel, and yet every one of these phrases was just utterly familiar to me. And of course that's how it works. We don't have to read romance novels to know all of those ways of speaking and thinking. And so I started thinking that I'd sort of fancied myself above all that. And I realized if it was all so familiar to me, it was in me. And to what extent had it actually exerted pressure on my life, the way I viewed my husband, my marriage, etc. So this is self-portrait with a bee in my mouth, and the thing that is a buzz within the speaker is that language of romance. I quote some of these phrases in the poem. I hope you'll be able to tell them. I said no. And then it was a buzz inside me. All wings, restless, raw lust for romance. You were undressing, peeling off the thick socks you'd sweat through. It wasn't you I refused. You smelled of cut grass, your back ached. You closed your eyes for a moment before I kissed you in what I believed was silence. But the buzz started up, hovered, as I searched out your lips, as I pulled you toward me, as I succumbed to the force of your lips. Though I kissed, of course, you, not the forceful domination of his lips. Like a bee in a glass jar, my mind buzzes, but the bee is in my mouth. The buzzing sometimes is so quiet I don't know it's there. I've tried to tempt it out. Weeding the garden, I nuzzle my cheek against the thick-veined petals, fragrances rising like incense. Only more fly in. I have only to touch you to be suddenly lifted into the cradle of your arms, to surrender completely. I lose you in the buzzing. All wings restless and a kind of anger in it. An open flower, a prairie rose, a little past bloom and still unattended. See how close a body can come to having wings. They pick and play me as if I were made for them. What was I made for then? I'm going to read a few new elegies for my mother. One of the things that I've thought about quite a lot is the way emotions, we have relationships with emotions as sort of presences and even companions. I've been thinking about Christopher Bolas's idea, for example, that hate is an emotion that is very easily conjured. So it's very quick and easy for us to remind ourselves when we hate somebody or we hate something, and we can be sort of instantly filled with that feeling. It's an emotion that simplifies and can be very satisfying. And if we want to be filled with it all the time, we really can't choose that in a way that we can't choose that about love. love doesn't work that way. And I don't think grief does exactly either, so that's sort of what I'm trying to work with. So I am one of your things now, one more of the things that survived you. I wear your long gray herringbone coat into long gray days, returning always to your other objects. Drawers of good silverware, spices, framed Madonnas who look at me, wondering what I have done. When you said you were afraid you were going to die, I said, everyone has to die. I didn't mean it so cruel like that. I meant to wave it away with someday. I meant it was going to be, had to be a long time still. Everyone has to die, you said through your last days, as if to console or to scold yourself. My one mother, sleep was sleep when you were here. And what are ours now? What fork, what knife, what soul, what all, what eats? Your name in stone is not sleep. You were like one of those zoo animals, and everyone was there to watch you die. We offered you popsicles, ice, a sponge we'd dab on your lips. We crowded you, stroked your legs, your hair, tried to keep you kempt without hurting, disturbing you, prodding you, until your eyes, when they opened, couldn't hold us. We hated that. Hated your stillness, your days of stillness, not eating, not speaking, and we went on prodding your pale pillows, endless sheets, until you finally sprang from them, burst through the night of them. You were almost up, attempting to stand up on your overswollen feet as you pulled the soft stretched neckline of your gown, your breathless, staggered, bleeding, trying to rise out of you. And I don't know if you knew it was me as I held you down to the bed, down to your somehow still beautiful body as it failed you. And when you were not the body we watched, we crowded closer to watch. I am building a body in my mind, and it is your body. Not disappeared into the grave, but into blizzarding, swan-colored lines of lace, holding something like your shape. And just like flesh, you open, absorbing each stray iridescence, each veil of updraft, upswirl, white noon scattering your edges, your something like a dress I can't put on. I am building your body, building a mind to move through every curve of you, compose you. Do you feel now my embellishment of falling ash, my flock of filaments, my costume of sound? I think grief can do really strange things to us. It doesn't always bring out our, as they say, best selves. You find yourself doing things like picking fights for no reason. This is called Yes, I'm Talking to You. My dead mother is more beautiful than yours. My dead mother will always be more beautiful than yours. Even her deadness is more beautiful. The sun and the moon must make their haste. Make your deadness real to me now. Why should you be always so real and so near to me? I should know that you don't know me anymore. In every sun I close my eyes and see you everywhere inside me. What does dead mean? Are there shades of different ways of being dead? Dead with the damp smell of lichen, dead, really dead with the quiet dead, and dead who stray. Every time I look at a colorless, bright moon rising fast above the yard, words start low sounds inside my head, and I'm talking to you as if it were you up there, or as if we were looking up at the same night sky. Make yourself dead now, gentle mother. I'm calling, needing you now, not to answer. Invitation. If I can believe in air, I can believe in the angels of air. Angels, come breathe with me. Angel of abortion, angel of alchemy, angels of barrenness and bliss, exhale closer. Let me feel your breath on my teeth. I call to you, angels of embryos, earthquakes, you of forgetfulness. Angels of infection, cover my mouth and nose with your mouth. Failed inventions, tilt my head back. Angels of prostitution and rain, you of sheerness and sorrow. You who take nothing, breathe into me. You who have cleansed your lips with fire, I do not need to know your faces. I do not need you to have faces. Angels of water insects, let me sleep to the sound of your breathing. You without lungs make my chest rise. Without you, my air tastes like nothing. For you, I hold my breath. This last collection centers largely around the figure of Mary, the biblical mother of God, mother of Jesus, Mary. And she was a figure I loved very much growing up, and have been working out how to have a sort of new relationship to her. She was somebody I idealized, but I think as somebody who is largely valued because she was a virgin and a mother, she's a hard model to have, trying to go through life as neither a virgin nor a mother. This is imagining from her point of view. This is Annunciation, Eve to Ave. The wings behind the man I never saw, but often afterward I dreamed his lips, remembered the slight angle of his hips, his feet among the tulips and the straw. I liked the way his voice deepened as he called. As for the words, I liked the showmanship with which he spoke them. Behind him, distant ships went still, the water was smooth as his jaw. And when I learned that he was not a man, bullwhip, horsewhip, unzip, I could have crawled through thorn and bee, the thick of hive, courtship, lordship, gossip, and lavender. But I was quiet, quiet as eager astonished, dutiful fall. This is called Girls Overheard While Assembling a Puzzle, and it's imagining the point of view of young girls trying to literally put together a puzzle of the scene between angel and girl. Are you sure this blue is the same as the blue over there? This wall's like the bottom of a pool. Its color, I mean. I need a darker two-piece this summer, the kind with elastic at the waist so it actually fits. I can't find her hands. Where does this gold go? It's like the angels giving her a little piece of honeycomb to eat. I don't see why God doesn't just come down and kiss her himself. This is the red of that lipstick we saw at the mall. This piece of her neck could fit into the light part of the sky. I think this is a piece of water. What kind of queen? You mean right here? And are we supposed to believe she can suddenly talk angel? Who thought this stuff up? I wish I had a velvet bikini. That flower is the color of the veins in my grandmother's hands. I wish we could walk into that garden and pick an X-ray to float on. Yeah, I do too. I'd say a zillion yeses to anyone for that. I have two more. And thinking, letting the scene of Annunciation sort of centered this collection, I thought a lot about proximity and distance. I love in the imagining of so many of the painters that these two figures come so close to each other that the human actually perceives and is changed by this otherworldly figure, and yet that painters always emphasize distance, right? There's never a complete touching, there's never a complete understanding. And something I think a lot about is to love somebody. I think one of my constant challenges is not just trying to hold on to my idea of who I think they are, but to actually be present to who he or she is today, now, in the present, as people evolve and change. But what does that mean then when we spend long periods of time away from somebody, and we're just carrying sort of our ideas of them with us? So this is about that, and also about just looking at a tree full of birds in Italy. Too many pigeons to count and one dove. The startled ash tree alive with them, wings lacing through silver green leaves, jumping from branch to branch, they rattle the leaves or make the green leaves sound dry. The surprise of a boat horn from below, increasingly voluptuous fluttering. One just there on a low branch, gone before I can breathe or describe it. Nothing stays long enough to know. How long since we've been inside anything together, the way these birds are inside this tree together, shifting, making it into a shivering thing. A church bell rings once. One pigeon flies over the top of the tree without skimming the high leaves. Another flies to the tree below. I cannot find a picture of you in my mind to land on. In the overlapping of soft, dark leaves, wings look to be tangled, but I see when they pull apart, one bird far, one near, they did not touch. One bird seems caught, flapping violently, one becomes still and tilts down. I cannot find the dove, have not seen it for minutes. One pigeon nips at something on a high branch, moves slower. It has taken this long for me to understand that they are eating. Two flap their wings without leaving their branches, and I am tired of paying attention. The birds are all the same to me. It's too warm to stay still in the sun, leaning over this wood fence to try to get a better look into the branches. Why do the pigeons gather in this tree or that one? Why leave one for another in this moment or that one? Why do I miss you now, but not now? My old idea of you, that feeling for you I lost and remade so many times until it was something else, as strange as your touch was familiar. Why not look up at the high white Alps or down at the untrumpeted shadows bronzing the water, or wonder why an almost lavender smoke hovers over that particular orange villa on the far shoreline, or if I am capable of loving you better, or at all, from this distance. I think I'll leave it there. Thanks.
I have a question, Mary. For those not familiar with Incarnadine, can you speak to the title of that collection and maybe talk about that in relation to the book?
Sure. So Incarnadine can be pronounced Incarnadine or Incarnadine. I guess Incarnadine is the more correct British pronunciation, but I'm sort of fond of Incarnadine. I chose it because of its relationship to incarnation. So I liked how close it was in the book. Really is about embodied experience that is incarnate in the world. But I didn't want to call the book Incarnation. Incarnadine seemed much more suggestive and interesting to me, partly because it is a color. It's the color red. And I always loved that moment in Macbeth where, he's trying to wash the guilt of the blood off of his hands, and he says, like, could the multitudinous seas Incarnadine turning the green one red? I just feel this overwhelming sense of guilt, and I feel like I'm corrupting the whole world hopelessly. I was interested in that sense of just that sense of being human and blood-filled in the world, and also, traditionally when this figure of Mary is portrayed, it's red and blue that she is dressed in. So I thought a lot about these colors in the book. These are the two colors I really use a lot throughout the collection. I read something by Carl Sagan I put in the notes that got me thinking a lot, because he says that the Earth looks blue from space because of how light filters out. It's not that the Earth actually is more blue than red, it's just how the light what gets filtered out and what gets reflected. And I loved this idea so I used actually much more blue in the collection than red, but I loved that idea that a lot more blue is coming at us. It doesn't mean there's more blue in the world of these poems, it's just coming. And so I used red more selectively when I needed it. So the question was, did I start with an Annunciation painting image? I actually started with a bunch of them. So the first time I went to Italy, I was really overwhelmed by the number of paintings in the museums there that dealt with the same subject. I'd spent a lot of time in New York museums, but it's just not the same scale as in Florence and Rome, where you're just in room after room after room after room of the same 5 or 6 religious scenes over and over and over again. And I sort of had a dual reaction to that, one which was to almost nausea of just feeling just so ridiculously lucky to be alive now as an artist and not being limited to these same scenes over and over and over. But what I was also struck with in seeing some of these paintings for the first time was I was absolutely bowled over by them. And I started thinking, is there something about the limitation that these artists faced and being limited to such a small number of possibilities that actually engendered kind of the power of these paintings and these choices? And so I started thinking, well, what would it mean? What if I chose one of these old scenes and tried to give myself a similar limitation in a series of poems? And for me, there was no question if I was going to do that, which scene it was going to be. The Annunciation scene attracts me for all kinds of reasons. It's, I think, one of the few that doesn't have a male body in the center of these religious scenes. I think I grew up thinking it was a scene between 2 women, because the angel Gabriel is often portrayed in such a sort of feminine way. I sort of looked at it, it looked like a scene between women. And the subject is not so much that sort of central body, but the space between beings. That dynamic space and what was happening in it was interesting to me. It's also just a scene that shaped me. I grew up in a very Catholic household and world, having been given this name Mary. I always felt like this sort of platonic falling off from something much better. And my best friend growing up was Gabriella, and I grew up going to the Church of the Annunciation. So I looked at the scene, I can't tell you how many hours growing up, week after week after week after week. So it was the scene for me to go back to and start working with. So it wasn't, I think the idea struck me on my second tour through within a few days of the Uffizi in Florence, and being within 2 rooms of Simone Martini's Annunciation and Da Vinci's Annunciation, and then Botticelli's Annunciation, right? These 3 Annunciations right next to each other. And there just seemed to be an almost electric pulse between them. So that's where it started for me. Yeah, I was so stupid when I started. I thought, I'll write a poem about Da Vinci, and then I'll write a poem about Simone Martini's Annunciation, and then I'll write a poem about Fra Angelico's Annunciation, and those were so boring. And then I had to start doing what I think most writers start doing at some point when they're writing about art, and started thinking, well, how did the painters do it? Right? What are the techniques they used? And how can I sort of imaginatively start translating some of those techniques? Because a lot of painters that were quite adept at realism deliberately didn't use it when they were using the Annunciation scene. They really were emphasizing mystery, right? Something beyond our understanding. And that was what was interesting me as well. The question was my use of the word fall in the collection. Fall from grace, fall from faith, fall away from others, fall away, the 1,000 kinds of fall. So that, absolutely, that's part of why it was interesting to me to come to a scene of coming together and dealing with so much that felt like it was falling apart. That for me was the dynamism of, to think about a scene, for example, of endangered species that are sort of falling out of the world against the scene that is supposed to be a scene of beginning. That was where the energy was for me, and a way, again, of contemplating what we don't understand. I don't understand anyway. No, for me, the real challenge, see, that's why I wore this pin tonight, it has the same shape, of that sort of sun. No, what I really wanted to do was, the assignment I gave myself was to try to write a poem that really didn't have a place that was a better place to begin. I really wanted them to be on an equal plane where it really didn't matter where you started or ended. I really approached it as a meditation where the sequence was not about a progression. It was not about moving through time. That was the whole ambition for me of that poem. What was the other part of the question?
What role do you see these two poems playing in the larger collection? They're just so wildly different.
Right.
That's the collection.
So what role do those more deliberately visual or shaped poems have in the collection? Just looking for. So I thought a lot about the idea that I began the collection with, which is the epigraph from Simone Weil about the mysteries of faith being degraded if they are made into objects of affirmation or negation, when in reality they should be objects of contemplation. So I thought a lot about that idea of objects of contemplation and trying to make poems as objects of contemplation that are not setting out to be affirmative or negative. And so, yeah, I wanted there to be more than one that could sort of go multi-directionally. I mean, this seems to me pretty hard in poems, because poems are about time and moving through sequence and time, but to try to sort of push the bounds of that in a couple instances that could be more visually multi-directional and be approached many ways. So, does that answer?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, the question, if I understood it, is do I take some of that contemplation in a more self-directed, self-scrutiny kind of direction? So, yeah, I hope so. One that stands out to me in that direction, just because it was, every time I go to a poem, I hope in some ways to be taken where I don't know, and ideally to be stretched a bit and even changed a little. So, for example, the Cathars poem was one that started where I just had this, I learned this gruesome piece of history and I couldn't get it out of my mind, and I didn't know what to do with it. And so I just started sort of playing with where it might take me, and I let the sort of hyperdrama play out into even bigger directions, and what I sort of finally sort of grappled with myself, I think, and that is, I think I had some sense early on of being seduced by, the great heroic gesture being the gesture of love, right? That really proves you love somebody. And the more I sort of grappled with that, the more it felt like that thinking about getting to perform that heroic gesture of love for somebody else really feels a lot more like self-love than it is about, than it has to do with anybody else. And so that was a moment for me of, You know, I mean, I guess it has a relationship to that poem I read about the romance writer's phrase book, right? What's in me that is operating on my imagination, not for the better. Yeah. One more?